Hey everybody, and welcome to another installment of Board Games Hitting My Table. So in this series I talk about all of the non-new to me board games that I've been playing over the last couple of weeks. Now I'm going to do something a little bit different this episode, and I'm not going to be putting up my rankings at the bottom of the screen, and that is because I don't want to spoil anything, because my top 100 will be dropping starting in November. But before I get started on the games, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer here in the UK, where you can get games old and new. And if you use my link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. But let's get started on Istanbul, or with Istanbul. So I played a 3-player game of Istanbul with the Mocha and Bakshish expansion. Always a go-to game for me, this one. I've never had a bad experience with it. Nice, snappy little Euro game that plays in about 45 minutes. We had a very tight race, all going through very different strategies. I was going for a very loading up my wagons as much as I can, trying to get money from the markets and then buying gems. Some of my opponents took more of a coffee route, and I just ended up squeaking the win here, and it worked really well. We all had a good time with it, and it's nice you can play a game of this depth in such a short period. Now, funnily enough, normally when I play with the Baksheesh expansion, I think I tend to go for the strategy of picking up those cards, because there are special cards with that expansion that are very powerful. However, they do take your whole turn to use them. I picked up a couple of those cards, but the benefit from those cards were just not very useful for me, because I'd already achieved what they were contributing to. But yeah, still love this one, and it's going to do very well on my rankings as usual. Next up, we played a 4-player game. In fact, we played a couple of 4-player games of Rapido, also known as Escape. This is a classic, I'll say another classic, push your luck style game by Dr. Rainer Knizia, and this is his take on the Can't Stop game, an older Sid Saxon design. This one is a bit more interactive, it's a bit faster, a lot less downtime. Now, I do like Can't Stop, but I do prefer Rapido, because it's just a bit more engaging, and you can actually affect other players when it's your turn. But this is one of the only games that my dad will play with us, and we had an absolute blast. I mean, we played 2 races back to back, and both of them were neck and neck finishes. And I love the different ways you can climb these stairs or go bust, because you can either kind of bank yourself on a seat and hopefully it gets back round to you with you on that step and go up a certain amount of places, or you can instantly fly up these steps by rolling doubles. And those instant rolls are what sealed the victory on this game. But yeah, love this one, and my review will hopefully be dropping soon. We played another, I think it's a 3 or 4-player game of So Clover. So just some party goodness there. I like a bit of word association, and the same applies with Just One. Played a 4-player game of that one. Wasn't even tallying the scores, but it's just a nice little, nice little time burner. So those two are always kind of bankers as well. Get them to the table semi-regularly, because you can play them with absolutely anybody. I also went back and revisited Floriferous. So this is a game that I was kind of on the fence with. I have recently reviewed this one as part of a rapid review set of videos. This one is a very nice little set collection game. As you are picking up these cards are going to be forming... Well, they have different types on them, they have different shapes and colours, and even bugs on them, which are all associated to different, set collection point criteria that you're aiming towards. You've got public objectives, as well as personal objectives that you can draft as the game goes on. It is starting to win me back. I did actually have this on my sell pile for a while, and I thought, let's give it another go, and I'm glad I did, because I really enjoyed this little 2-player game. And yeah, it scales actually well from 2 to 4. In fact, it says 1 to 4 here, but I haven't played the solo mode. About 20 minutes, looks very nice, and it's just a solid filler. So that is Floriferous. Glad I played that one again. We also played a 3-player game of The Quest for El Dorado. So talking about games that have been hot, then cold, then hot again. This one, I found it really hard to kind of seal my final thoughts in place, because when I first played it, I was a little bit underwhelmed. It was a bit lighter than I was expecting. Then the second time I played it, expecting that it was going to be light, I enjoyed it a lot more. And since I've kind of gotten that mindset that this is a gateway game, this is light, just go with it through the motions and just enjoy the process. Don't think too hard about your turns. And I think if you get into that mindset, you can actually really enjoy this one and get some fun from it. We had another tight race here. I think we went kind of different tracks, tailoring towards different strategies in terms of the cards we're drafting. And yeah, it came down to just a hex or two in it. So it's nice to have a nice competitive game, because there is potential for this game to have a runaway leader. But yeah, a nice little deck builder game. Probably one of my favourite deck builders, actually, because I'm not a huge fan of that genre. But the Quest for El Dorado does it just right. And I'll be interested to see what the expansion does for this one, because I'm aware it is a standalone, but does it add much more interest to this base game? And I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on it if you have any experiences with that. So that is the Quest for El Dorado. Staying with Knizia, we played a 3-player game, I believe, of Botswana, also known as Wildlife Safari, Loco, amongst other names, and I think there might even be a reprint of this one coming out soon. This is a very simple little almost stock holding, or I should say commodity speculation style game, as all you're doing is you are playing a card and picking up an animal. The most recent card you've played of a certain type is the value of that animal by the time the game end triggers. So if the final card, say, you know, the 5 zebra is played, that means every zebra you've collected is going to be worth 5 points. Now, I had an absolute disaster with this game. I scored next to nothing. All my animals tanked in value, but I still like it. You know, you can't really plan too much. It's a little bit chaotic, but I don't mind that at times, considering this is a 15-minute game, at least if you only play around. So that is Botswana. Yeah, another kind of simple but effective game. Also played a 3-player game of Peloponnese. I'm very happy to get this one back to the table. Been meaning to do it for a long time. This is a bidding style game, almost a very simple Civ game, I suppose. But that is a stretch to call it that. As you are collecting these tiles through bidding on them, the bidding mechanism is quite interesting, because you can assign your money to the tiles, but other people can outbid you, and then you can shift those coins to another tile, or you can take them back into your supply plus 1 coin. And that's the kind of twist on this one. The main focus is the fact that throughout the game, these disasters will be triggered, which can affect your state of play. So it could say, you know, lose a third of your population. It could say, and lose your food, or these kind of things. You need to be in a position to prepare for those and, you know, weather the storm. Now, the way that the hazards or the disasters triggered in this game is quite interesting, because I believe the final 2 disasters were the most punishing. It was the population one and the food one. So it was quite interesting to see that happen right at the end. And this game also has a very clever scoring mechanism where you have to balance 2 things, either the points you're getting from your tiles and your money mixed with your population being tripled in value. And the highest of those 2 will be your final score. So it's a bit of a balancing act there. Very clever in the way it works. Plays in around 45 minutes, and it's got a good kind of depth to time ratio on this one. Check out my review, because this is a game that's faded into obscurity, and it's pretty damn excellent. Also played a 3-player game, go back to Knizia, of Babylonia. Still my favourite of the Knizia games. Simple little route building game, and yeah, we had a nice game of this one. I've never really had a duff one, to be honest. It's a very snappy experience as you're placing these discs on the board. There's no map here or anything. I've talked about this one quite a lot, so I think I'll just move on, but you know I love this game if you watch my content regularly. Also played a 3-player game of Millefiori. So you can see I really have got this Knizia, you know, bug at the moment, I suppose. This one I hadn't played in probably around, you know, 5 months or so, 4 months. Very hot on it when it first came out. Definitely right at the top of my games of last year. And yeah, this one is still going extremely strong for me. I love this combo-rific nature of the gameplay, as you can string these actions together, which will trigger a new one and a new one and a new one, getting more and more points as you go. A very satisfying game. The drafting works well. This is one of my favourite examples of a drafting game. Doesn't have to be complicated, but it has to be meaningful. So all you're doing is you're drafting these cards and taking the associated action with that card, which are all very simple in their own right, just stringing your pieces together to get more and more points, to build chains and networks on the grid here, and being careful not to give your opponent opportunities to score more than you do. But yeah, this one was lovely. We had a quite a diverse game. One of my opponents really did stack up a bunch of these keys, really racking up those huge points, and unfortunately someone stopped them, you know, snowballing with that. But I think I just snuck the win because I managed to get a very impressive network with the snaking action here, and getting those double. Basically, one of these cards will let you double your score whenever you score them, and those kept on slipping through to me, which probably just let me squeeze out the victory. So again, you've got to be very careful, not only to help yourself, but to hurt others as well. So as Millefiori, really, Knizia at his best in my opinion, and it's so refreshing to say that considering this is brand new, or it only came out this or last year. So that is Millefiori. Also played a 2-player game of Viceroy, and I actually played this one with, there's an expansion module that slightly tweaks the 2-player game, and that is because normally with a 2-player game you'd have 4 things to draft from, each associated to a different colour, which you're going to bid with. But the expansion actually makes it you've only got 2 areas to draft from, meaning there's going to be a lot more crossover, which adds a lot more player attention. But each of these places you can draft from has 2 colours associated to it. So it keeps it nice and tight for that 2-player version. Basically, you're building a pyramid up of these characters, scoring points as you go, getting benefits. And I love the diversity in the ways you can score points in this game. Tons of things you can go for. Really good to look at. That pyramid mechanism is fantastic. And again, another lovely game that you can get played in around 45 minutes. And yeah, no sign of me tiring with this one. And it's been consistently hitting the table since I've had it. That is Viceroy. So I played a 3-player game of El Caballero. This is the slight tweak on the classic El Grande, but this is the tile placement version of it. Still has area majority, and it has this awesome initiative card system that El Grande is so famous for. Another very competitive game. I think, again, I've managed to squeeze out the win there because I think on the last scoring turn, I had complete domination of one island with no competitors whatsoever. So I was getting the full brunt of the points and nobody else was making up that ground. But yeah, this is a really clever tile placement game. Another one that's faded into obscurity. Not quite sure why, because it holds up well today. And yeah, hopefully I'll get a chance to record a comprehensive review of this one in the very near future, because I think it deserves it, and hopefully it will have somewhat of a rejuvenation, because it's just, yeah, criminal that this one doesn't really sit in the spotlight, because it strikes a good balance between being accessible, thinky. Yeah, you can make a longer game or a shorter game. You can cut some mechanisms out and keep it simple, or you can add them in. So yeah, really fantastic game. That is El Caballero. Speaking of underrated, we have Docmus. This is almost like a twist on a Knizia game. It's not a Knizia game, but this is like a rebuilding thing. As you're placing your player pawns on this map here, they have to keep chaining on each other, but you can start encroaching on other tiles. But before you do anything, you draft one of these god powers that can manipulate the board state, which might say you can shift this tile to the next empty spot, you can rotate them, you can kind of move your pieces, one of your pieces on the board, which you normally wouldn't be able to do. And you're basically trying to spread your influence onto all the different tiles. You're trying to dominate one tile, trying to get your presence next to these temples. So yeah, lots of things you have to consider here. You can't do it all. You need to be efficient as you can. And I actually had a very successful game of this one. I'm not quite sure why. Everything just kind of slotted into place. I don't think I wasted much movement at all. And I managed to get a good spread. I managed to dominate a couple of tiles to get those points. Got next to loads of golden temples. Yeah, another one I really want to review because I don't hear anybody talking about this game. And it really is so well designed. Very precise, no bloat, simple to the core feel of the game, and it doesn't kind of divert from that, which I really like. So that is Docmus. Soldiering on then, I played a few games here at 2 players, and these I introduced to a brand new gamer who'd never played any games at all. So, like, literally not beyond the classic Monopolies and stuff like that. So I played Patchwork, Coloretto, and Splitter. Now, Patchwork went down an absolute treat. She really enjoyed that one. The other two, Coloretto went down well. Splitter, not so much. I'm not quite sure why. Probably more of its random nature and damage mitigation. Or limitation, I suppose I should say. But the other two, these two are bankers again. These ones I trust completely. They just seem to click with people from the get-go, and I like the way that they still hold up after all this time. I'd play these with people who've never played games before, but I still would be happily play this with people who've played hundreds or thousands of games. So yeah, some very good games there, and yeah, nice to play with someone who's not really experienced. So that is a few 2-player games that I've played. And soldiering on, going on back to the heavier Euros, I played a 3-player game of The Magnificent. So introduced this one to 2 new gamers who'd not played it before, or 2 people who hadn't played the game, and it went down a treat. I think this game is actually very easy to teach because there's only like 3 actions you can take. Yes, there are obviously a fallout of a ton of different things that can come of a consequence of those actions, but yeah, actually explaining the game is easy, but mastering the game is difficult. But still, it went down a treat. I think everyone had a great time, a very close competitive game, everyone going for a kind of a different thing. My grid placement in terms of placing the tiles down was absolutely terrible. I didn't quite get enough workers either, and my personal worker placement spots weren't the best. I still managed to luckily squeeze out a win here because I scored quite well from all my cards at all times, and I had a good flow of cash, which is important in this game because it is very hard to manage your funds, and you need to pay for your most strong dice type at the end of the round. Check out my review of this one, rated it very highly. One of my favourite games I've played this year, right up there for me. And it's going to, spoiler alert, this is going to debut in my top 100, so it's going to be one of the few that have broken through. So that is The Magnificent, a fantastic dice drafter. Carrying on then with the final couple, we have another favourite of mine with Grand Austria Hotel. So this one is another medium weight Euro. I hadn't played this one for a long time actually. I played this one with my mum and my brother. My brother hadn't played this in donkey's years, so it was good to kind of reintroduce it. And it flows so lovely. I love that drafting mechanism as you are, taking from these action pools. The more dice there, the stronger action you get. However, you might be lured in by those actions with only, a 1 or 2 dice there because those actions are going to be rare this round. So all you're doing is you are getting these patrons in, you're feeding them, you're sending them off to their rooms, but you can string a bunch of these actions together because when you successfully, bed one of your or send one of your guests to bed happy, then you get benefits from them. You also have a big diverse range of these staffing cards that can really boost your engine and make you more efficient. Yeah, just a brilliant Euro. Always ranked extremely high for me, and nice to revisit some favourites. Now, I actually decided not to play with any of the Let's Waltz expansion material. Now, I have got the expansion, but I'm kind of struggling to see what does that really add to the game. So I actually think I prefer the core game, without the expansion material. So that is Grand Austria Hotel. Also played a 3-player game of Tzolk'in, the Mayan calendar. This was actually one of the first, if not the first, Euro-style game that was introduced to me many years ago. I was enamoured by its design then, and I still feel the same way now. My enthusiasm has not waned even slightly, and I don't think any game has replicated or duplicated what this game does with its mechanism. In its essence, it is a simple worker placement game, but you have this almost 4D element to it where you have to manage time. So you're only either putting workers on the board or taking them off. The longer you leave them on the board, the better rewards you're going to get. But you don't want to leave them on too long because you can end up wasting actions. Just brilliant resource management, great upgrades, technologies, track climbing, a kitchen sink of Euro goodness. And, it's maintained its pedigree with me. And, the luster and shine on this game is still shining for me. I had a really competitive game here. We went, I think, 3 very different routes. I went skull heavy in terms of getting skulls, putting them on here, getting the technology where you can deposit skulls a space higher. My opponents really did kind of focus on the technology more than I did, which did cost me at times. I thought I was going to fall behind, and I was falling behind on the tracks, but managed to make up ground at the end by depositing the resources at another spot here, which managed to just let me squeeze it to the top of those tracks and at least win a couple of them to edge out the win. But yeah, really loved revisiting this one. I hadn't played it in around 3 or 4 years, which is quite baffling when I managed to see when I last played it. But that is Tzolk'in, the Mayan calendar. And the final ones I haven't got here physically. I had played a couple of games of the Game of 49, another game that I've reviewed in the same set actually that I reviewed Floriferous in. Simple bidding game. I had fun with it, but I think, the path is run out for that one. I'm not really interested in playing it much more. And you have to make too many house rules to really enjoy it. But check out my review for my full thoughts on that one. Also played a 3-player game of Photosynthesis, another game I haven't played in many years, but nice to go back to it. I do quite like its design, very clever and thematic ties kind of embedded in this game. And yeah, I enjoyed the process and it was good. I have no issue with playing that game at all. And finally, we played a 4-player game, I believe, of Container, another game that I haven't played in probably 4 or 5 years. Very interesting economic style game. Kind of closed economy, but not quite. Some hidden objectives, you're not quite sure what people are going for. Lots of kind of murkiness and obscurity in terms of tracking the value of things, what you're selling things for, what you're buying them for, how much points you're going to get for them. But still, a very interesting game, and one that I'd happily revisit every couple of years, but probably wouldn't want to own. But I still really enjoyed it, and it was a nice revisit to a game that I'd kind of forgotten a lot about. So that is Container. So there we have it. Those are all the games that I've been playing in the last couple of weeks. Definitely quite a hefty week, actually, much more than usual. I said be sure to keep an eye out next month when I'm going to start releasing my top 100 games of all time. Always like doing that. And yeah, it's going to be fun to do. But for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye-bye.